The Book 5 begins and more banner features the brand new Book 5 character, Reginn, and some Sacred Stones allies. You'll be able to summon Natasha, Duessel, Selena, and Reginn, but everyone does get a free copy from the story. We'll be covering everyone's stats and skills, plus talk about some build ideas. We also have Knoll being introduced to the game via the Book 5 quest, and you can get 2 4-star copies rather easily. He will be added to the 3 to 4-star summoning pool later this month, so I'll cover him at the very end of this video. Now, for the 4-star focus unit, we have Natasha. You can get her at 4-star and 5-star rarity, but getting her at 4 stars will not affect your pity rates, and do remember that the new pity rate changes for getting pity broken are in effect. The 40 summon spark mechanic is also active, so get those first summon tickets from forging bonds first. As a unit, Natasha is an infantry healer. She has 37 HP, 36 attack, 32 speed, 24 defense, and 36 resistance. Natasha is actually our new highest attack infantry healer and only behind Flame for any healers. With 32 base speed and being a demoted unit, if you can get a speed boon, then she will be a rather competent offensive healer. Natasha does have an HP super boon, but for the most part that won't really change much since 37 base HP isn't exactly super high. With 24 defense, Natasha will still be weak to physical hits, but a little bit sturdier than most. She will be fine against magic attacks, and 36 res is pretty great. She's only behind Selena in terms of base res stats. For skills, Natasha only brings us old skills, most which aren't hard to find. She has Absorb Plus for life stealing and healing after fighting. She then has Martyr Plus for her healing assist skill and Heavenly Light as her special. Her A skill is HP and Res 2, which makes its low rarity summonable appearance, but it's not exactly a high tier option. Natasha's rare skill worth grabbing is definitely Close Guard 3. It was on some heroic grail units, but now you can get it from summoning. Overall, Natasha's kit isn't exactly outlandish, pretty standard for a demoted healer. For the most part, Natasha is a perfectly fine infantry healer. Her stat spread is somewhat balanced, and I would compare it to Emran, who is another solid option. Natasha will have higher attack and res, but Emran has more HP and speed. Still, for Natasha, you can very easily outfit her with the standard offensive healer builds, get her a plus speed boon, submerges, Wrath for dazzling staff, and then any attack and speed boosting skills. Attack and speed push 4 is a good option for healers, although bonds are also available. Very important to know that from the Ephemera Combat Manuals for this month, we have Nir's Levantine, and she has Wrathful Staff. That is pretty huge, so you could grab that for Natasha if you wish. For offensive staffs, you can also grab Summer Reese's Palm Staff, which inflicts -5 attack and speed on enemies within 2 spaces, or the usual Pain Plus staff with Savage Blow is fun too. In terms of more standard support builds, Natasha can double up with Close Guard skills thanks to the Sacred Seal version, or she can use Ploys and Sabotage debuffs if you buff her res stat. She can pretty much go with any healing assist and special combo you want, although Flame did introduce the new Rescue Plus healing skill that has drawback attached to it. In conclusion, Natasha is a great healing option stat-wise and has room for different builds. She definitely isn't game-changing, but is a fine unit if you're still looking to invest in a healer. Next up we have Duessel, known as the Obsidian. He's a Lance Cavalier with 41 HP, 39 attack, 18 speed, 39 defense, and 31 resistance. Like his Great Knight class in Sacred Stones, Duessel is basically an army unit on a horse. He will have attack and defense super boons, and either one is fantastic. Duessel will have the highest defense for any Cavalier and is tied for second highest attack in the class as well. His 31 res is also very respectable among Lance Cavaliers, with his dump stat being speed. Duessel will take a lot of hits, but the man can dish it right back if he survives. For old skills, the Obsidian will come with Bonfire to no surprise. He also has low attack and defense, and Rouse defense and res, very sturdy base kit already. For his unique weapon, Duessel pulls out his Obsidian Lance. This 16-minute weapon grants +3 defense, so he naturally has 42 defense, which is just solid. If Duessel is not adjacent to an ally, he inflicts -6 attack and defense on the foe during combat, and he makes a guaranteed follow-up attack. Very simple weapon. Duessel is essentially a one-man army. He will be fine all on his own. The -6 attack debuff is great with his high defense and res stats, and -6 defense plus a free follow-up attack will give Duessel power on both phases. If you can't take him down fast, he will counterattack back very hard. For his new inheritable skill, Duessel brings us defense and res solo 4. If unit is not adjacent to an ally, grants +7 defense and res during combat. Now, defense and res solo is one of the harder solo variants to obtain because it was only on Dumo before, and now we have the tier 4 version. This is a nice skill for units who ideally already have enough damage output and are looking to tank a ton of hits on both phases. Obviously, it synergizes with Obsidian Lance's solo playstyle, and it's a great fit for Duessel. If you remember Pirate Veronica and Xander, then Duessel is basically the Lance version of that. He requires to be alone to activate all of his base kit, but he gains incredible power with +13 defense and res, and inflicts -9 attack and defense while getting a free follow-up attack and negating enemy attack and defense buffs. Like other solo builds, Duessel is very happy with the attack and defense solo sacred seal, and he very easily pushes past 50 defense. He can very much wall off a lot of physical hits, and he still has kill potential unless the enemy can negate his follow-up attacks. While his defense stats starts off incredibly high, Duessel will also have good magical resistance thanks to all the buffs and debuffs. I would say you pretty much don't need to change any of his base skills. You could go for distant counter or maybe an attack solo variant, but Duessel's very happy with low attack and defense since it stacks with his weapon. The Obsidian could make for a decent Guild Force Cavalier as well, pretty much showing Legendary Ephraim how it's done. The one major weakness for Duessel will be specials, and it's tough to fit guard in his build. You could use a tier 3 dual stance or the guard B skill, but both defense and res solo and low attack and defense are just so great for keeping Duessel ready for either phase. He's a very simple unit to use, and honestly that is nice since you don't have to think too hard. In Fade, Duessel showcases why he is called the Obsidian General. Next we have Selena, the Floor Spar. She's back again, but is now a Blue Mage Cavalier. For stats, Selena has 40 HP, 39 attack, 39 speed, 16 defense, and 23 resistance. Now, we've seen some crazy attack and speed spreads this year, so 39 attack and speed isn't that insane to see. However, if you compare Selena to other Mage Cavaliers, that is disgustingly high. Literally the only Mage Cav who comes close to that kind of firepower is Summer Selena, who already upped the bar back then. Now, regular Selena pushes that even further, and she has super boons in both attack and speed, so pick your poison. With all that said, with great power comes terrible defense and res stats, and Selena is a true glass cannon type mage. She has immense range with her 3 movement, but get any solid hit on her and she probably goes down. For old skills, Selena has rare attack and res plus for buffing allies. She also has life and death 4 for plus 7 attack and speed and minus 5 defense and res. Absolutely hilarious, as that drops her down to 11 defense, but her firepower is pushed to the max. In Sacred Stone, Selena was the bolting mage boss, and while Tome of Storms isn't a 10 range tome, it's a decent substitute. It grants a flat plus 3 speed, bringing Selena up to 42 speed naturally. At the start of combat, if the foe has more than 75% HP, Selena gets plus 5 attack and speed and no follow-up 3. She will neutralize effects that guarantee enemy follow-up attacks and effects that prevent Selena's own follow-ups. Another relatively simple weapon, but extremely deadly if you aren't prepared. Obviously, another plus 5 attack and speed on a high attack and speed mage with life and death 4 is not something anyone wants to tank, just an absurd amount of damage and speed on a unit with 5 range. Thanks to the no follow-up ability, Selena just needs to win the speed battle to double. However, she is super squishy, so if she takes a counterattack, then her streak could end right there. Luckily, no follow-up can work very nicely with Desperation, or you can use Wind and Water Sweep since its self-follow prevention penalty gets cancelled out. Either of these skills can keep Selena safe while she initiates, although both have conditions you still need to meet. Now for Selena's new inheritable skill, she has attack and res ruse 3. If a rally assist skill is used by a unit or target's unit, inflict minus 5 attack and res and guard on foes in cardinal directions of unit and target through the next actions. Ruse debuffs are pretty dang annoying since a backline support unit can cripple attackers from across the map. Not only is the rally buff and ruse debuff great for stat advantages, but inflicting guard from long range is super nice and can help out units like Duessel who may not be able to easily fit guard into their build. A nice support skill for the beat slot, and I believe this is the last ruse variant to complete the collection. In the simplest terms, Selena is a high damage glass cannon with incredible range. If she isn't disturbed, her damage output is really high, but any strong counterattack or initiation will easily bring her down. Tome of Storms plus Life and Death 4 is already plus 12 attack and speed. You can fit in the Swift Sparrow Sacred Seal for even more firepower. While I feel bad to replace a tier 4 skill, Selena will be even squishier with the minus 5 defense bonus penalty, and if you're in Desperation, it's going to be really hard to get in Desperation range because she probably gets one shot by any decent hit. You could use good old Fury to slowly get into Desperation range safely, and for PvE maps, this is probably much easier to use even if you get less attack and speed. Selena can also use the no follow plus wind/water sweep combo that Violet has popularized. While this allows you to bypass counterattacks completely from either physical or magical attacks, while still doubling, there are some restrictions. For one, there are a lot of other really fast units out there, so you do need to be careful. Second, Selena only gets no follow-up against healthy enemies, so if you need 2 attacks on an enemy with less than 75% HP, then she will only be able to attack once. Just some things to keep in mind. Now if you do want to go for just full damage, then level speed and res is an option, and she could grab the Rouse attack and defense buff from Summer Sylvain if you have an extra copy. If you really want to try and survive one counterattack, then you could use something like attack and defense solo with a Fury build. Sometimes sacrificing damage for survivability is more important. For the most part, Selena brings really high damage with little investment, and I'm sure you'll see her on those 8 through 8 cavalry lines. Last unit on the banner is Reginn, who you can get for free from book 5. She's a sword cavalier with 38 HP, 36 attack, 40 speed, 30 defense, and 24 resistance. For a free unit, Reginn is absolutely amazing, and the free copy will be very nice to use. She's an Astra Mythic hero, and reminder that starting with Reginn, her Astra Blessing has the new Aether Raids bonus that lets you bring 6 party members. She will also grant bonus attack to Astra Blessed allies. In terms of stats, Reginn has a great attack and speed spread for a cavalier, and she easily has the best offensive spread for a sword cavalier. She also has a speed and res super boon, so if you want to fish for another copy or spend your trade fruits, then Reginn could get a very nice boost. For ult skills, Reginn is absolutely stacked. She has Swift Sparrow 3, low speed and defense 3, and Panic Smoke. Essentially one of the best initiation kits you can ask for, so Reginn is prime fodder material if you don't want extra copies. For Reginn's weapon, she has Lingaither, and honestly, I think I may need to make a completely separate video just for this weapon. It's a 16-might sword that grants another +3 speed, bringing Reginn up to 43 speed total. It enables Canto 3 during turns 1 through 4. Also, if Reginn initiates combat, she gets +6 attack and speed and reduces damage from foes' first attack by 30%. Ignoring Canto for a bit, this is already a great sword, especially for a free unit. Reginn will hit 49 speed with just this weapon, and she has built-in damage reduction every time she initiates. She is super fast and should be able to tank one solid hit while probably doubling the enemy. Now, we need to talk about Canto because this has been an ability in various Fire Emblem games, and honestly, this could be a sign of a cavalry resurgence. Canto 3 basically states after an attack, assist skill, or structure destruction, unit gets to move 3 spaces. You can think of Canto as a Gale Force ability, but it comes with many restrictions, 8 different sentences to be exact. First, unit moves according to movement type. This is basically stating if you're a cavalier, you still cannot move through forest tiles. The fact this has to be stated could imply Canto could be on other class types. Second, Canto only works once per turn. I will come back to this one, but it's easy enough to understand. Third, cannot attack or assist. Basically, when you have your Canto action, Reginn can move again, but it's purely just to move, no attacking, no assist usage. Fourth, only highest value applied. Fifth, does not stack. I kind of feel like both of these imply there could be Canto 1 and or Canto 2, and obviously you won't be able to stack them up. Sixth, after moving, if a skill that grants another action would be triggered, like with Gale Force, Canto will trigger again. I kind of think this part is mistranslated because it seems to imply you can Canto twice in one turn when we already established that it only works once per turn. I tested this out and I think it meant that if you trigger Gale Force, you can Canto afterwards. However, if you use your Canto action before Gale Force, then get danced, and then proc Gale Force, you will not get another Canto action. Unless I'm misunderstanding something, there's no double Canto actions, and dancing won't change that. Moving on, 7th, unit's base movement has no effect on movement granted. Theoretically, if a flyer had Canto 3, they would be able to move 3 spaces, and if a cavalier had Canto 1, they would only be able to move 1 space. Their base movement doesn't matter. Again, assuming multiple levels of Canto can exist in the future. 8th, cannot warp using skills like Wings of Mercy a distance greater than 3 spaces. This is saying that a cavalier can warp over water or mountains with Wings of Mercy using the Canto action, but only if the open space is 3 spaces away. Canto won't let you warp across the map. I know this is a lot to take in, but luckily everyone gets Reginn for free, so I highly implore you to just try her out. Canto is absolutely busted, and it's insanely strong. Reginn can initiate, then completely retreat by herself. The only major thing you need to remember is that she only has Canto for turns 1 through 4. Afterwards, Canto will not trigger. Because Canto wasn't enough, Reginn also has her own special, Aether Shell. This 3 cooldown special will charge itself on turn 1. It then boosts Reginn's damage by 15 and calculates damage using the lower the foe's defense or res stat. A pre-charge special is kinda amazing on a cavalier who already has very high attack and speed. 15 damage isn't insane, but that's about equivalent to a 30 defense bonfire. The real kicker is that this attack has adaptive damage when it hits, so Reginn could target a high defense tank's res stat, for example. I don't know exactly how powerful the special will feel, but I think it's pretty solid, especially because Reginn has Canto. She can dive in, bop something with Aether Shell, and then retreat immediately. So it should be pretty obvious that Reginn is a very good free unit, 100% worth using, and her base kit is fantastic. With just her base kit, she has 64 attack and 56 speed on top of low speed and defense debuffs, and she has a pre-charge adaptive damage special. kinda nutty. Once you try her out, it's a super clear how busted Canto is, and the only real bad part is that it's only active for the start of the battle. If you want to use Reginn for PvE, she can pull off some crazy moves at the start, but she loses steam without Canto's mobility, and she'll feel much more like a traditional attack and speed initiator. I do want to note that assist skill choice actually matters quite a bit, because you can Canto after an assist skill. This means Reginn can reposition or pivot, then move again. If you want to stay in place, you may want a rally buff or ardent sacrifice. This is most important if you plan to use a dancer, so definitely try out a bunch of options. Now most players will be fine with Reginn's base kit, but there's a lot of hype around Gale Force with Canto, and for good reason. You can move, pivot over an ally, get danced, then attack, trigger Gale Force, and then move again. The mobility is insane. Another idea is that you could do some weird hit and run tactics. Reginn can attack with wind or water sweep, and she can get a free move afterwards to retreat. You could even run a suicidal Wings of Mercy set using Fury or a push skill. For even bigger brain strategies, Reginn could use Pass with Canto to get into the backline to warp in allies. I'm sure there's a lot of super creative plays you can make. Last note, Canto only procs if you attack, assist, or destroy structure. If you are using dancers and Gale Force, you want to be wary of when Canto procs. If you just move and wait, you can save Canto for later. To top things off, let's talk about Knoll for a bit. He's a red infantry mage with 43 HP, 37 attack, 32 speed, 19 defense, and 35 resistance. Pretty solid attack and res with HP on the higher side for a mage. With 32 base speed, Knoll can invest in the stat if you want, and it should be obvious that he doesn't want to take many physical attacks. For a mage that will be demoted, honestly not that bad, and very workable in many of his stats. For old skills, Knoll is bringing the Red Fox Tome into the low rarity pool. This 12 Might Tome inflicts -4 to all stats on the enemy when initiating. It's basically like a Swiss Sparrow Tome, but with some added defensive capabilities, and is probably the best offensive inheritable tome outside of a buffed up Blade Tome. For his special, Knoll has Luna, his A skill is Mirror Strike 2, and then he has Speed Ploy 3. Speed Ploy is only on 2 other units, so it's a very nice skill to see on a summonable option. For builds, Knoll is pretty much a red counterpart to Ileana, who is another Gen 5 demoted mage. He doesn't specialize in resistance as much, but if you want other build ideas, then Knoll can copy her. If you can fish for a plus speed boon, then Knoll can make the Fox Tome work. You can refine the Fox Tome for +2 speed, and in total it would give him +6 speed on initiations, which helps out a bunch. You can go with a standard Fury and Desperation set, or just double up on Swift Sparrow skills. If you want a mixed phase set, you could use Knoll's base kit with things like low attack and speed, any defense increase in Sacred Seal. Bond skills would also work as well, and you may instead want a different weapon like the Red Owl Tome. Knoll could use the Conch Bouquet from Summer Lawrence, or Laurel Breath from Valentine's Titania, and of course the standard Blade Tome are Raven Tomes. He doesn't really have a set role, so Knoll is very moldable into whatever you want him to be. If you want more inspiration, he's very similar to his Sacred Stone's 5-star counterpart, Ewan, who also doesn't have a unique tome. For most players, he's definitely not a game changer, although I'd argue it's because the inheritable tome options are just kinda meh, including the seasonal ones. Maybe that's gonna change in the future. That's gonna be everything for this banner, including Knoll. These Sacred Stone units are pretty simple, but there is a lot of information about Reginn. Luckily, she's free for everyone, so please give her a shot. Canto is very fun, and if it actually becomes a skill or something, then that's gonna be wild. I'm pretty happy that I get to chase after 2 demoted Sacred Stone units again. I already +10 Ross, and I'm very close to finishing Tethys. Would be nice to splurge on a healer for once, and it'd be nice to see Knoll instead of some of the usual red 3 to 4 stars. We do have a Grand Hero battle for Caleb coming up, but I'll be covering the new refines next. Thanks for watching, see you guys in the next one.